Imagine throwing a high-stakes dinner party for a local celebrity, only to have it crashed by the one person you despise most. In first-century Judea, this wasn't just an awkward moment, it was a social explosion. Today, we're diving into one of Jesus' most scandalous encounters, the story of the sinful woman and the parable of the two debtors, found in Luke chapter 7. It's a story of unpayable debt, calculated insults, and a silent sermon that flipped the religious world upside down. The setting is the home of Simon the Pharisee. Now, you have to understand the architecture here to get why this happens. Wealthy homes used a triclinium, a horseshoe-shaped table only inches off the ground. Guests didn't sit in chairs. They reclined on their left elbows on cushioned mats, with their bare feet stretched out behind them. Because Jesus was a rising local celebrity, Simon's meal was likely an open house, where townspeople could gather at the perimeter to listen to the rabbi's wisdom. But Simon had an agenda. He was likely testing Jesus' prophetic powers, but he started the night with a calculated insult. In that culture, a host was obligated to provide water for dusty feet, a kiss of greeting, and oil for the head. Simon gave Jesus none of these. By first-century standards, this was a public declaration that Jesus was socially inferior. Then she appears. Luke calls her a, quote, sinner of the city. Most scholars agree this was a euphemism for a promiscuous female. For her to enter a Pharisee's home, the epicenter of purity culture, was a radical act of vulnerability. She doesn't say a word. Instead, she stands behind Jesus at his feet and begins to weep. Her tears are so abundant they wash his feet. Then, she does the unthinkable. She lets down her hair to dry them. In that world, a woman unbinding her hair in public was a sign of extreme immodesty, even sexual immorality. She then breaks an alabaster jar of perfume. These jars were typically sealed. Once the neck was broken, the contents, often pure nard worth a year's wages, had to be used entirely. Simon is appalled. He thinks, if this man were a prophet, he would know she is a sinner. In Simon's mind, holiness meant avoiding uncleanness like a plague. Jesus, knowing Simon's thoughts, stops the room with a story. Jesus said, a certain moneylender had two debtors, one owed 500 denarii and the other 50. Let's break down the math. A denarius was the daily wage for a laborer. The 500 denarius debt was nearly 2 years of daily labor, a massive, unpayable burden for a peasant. The 50 denarius debt was about 2 months of wages. Neither could pay, so the moneylender freely canceled both debts. Jesus asks Simon, which of them will love him more? Simon, probably bored by the simple math, replies, I suppose the one for whom he canceled the larger debt. Jesus then turns to the woman but continues talking to Simon. He points out every single one of Simon's failures. Simon gave no water, she used her tears. Simon gave no kiss, she hasn't stopped kissing his feet. Simon gave no oil, she used expensive ointment. Then comes the theological twist that scholars have debated for centuries. In Luke chapter 7, verse 47, Jesus says, her sins, which are many, have been forgiven. Hence, she has shown great love. Does this mean she was forgiven because she loved? No. The Greek word hotai here is evidential. Her love wasn't the cause of her forgiveness, it was the proof of it. She loved much because she already knew she had been forgiven much. Jesus ends the night by looking at the woman and saying, your sins are forgiven. Your faith has saved you. Go in peace. This wasn't just about spiritual peace. It was about restoration to the community. Simon viewed himself as a 50 denarii debtor, a basically good person who didn't need much grace. Because he felt no need, he had no capacity for love. The woman knew she was bankrupt, and when that unpayable debt was wiped clean, her only response could be extravagant, sacrificial love. So the question for us is, do we see ourselves as good enough like Simon, or do we recognize the magnitude of the grace we've received? If you found this deep dive into the parable of the two debtors helpful, hit that like button and subscribe for more extreme breakdowns of the world's most famous stories. Leave a comment below. Who do you identify with more in this story, Simon or the woman? Thanks for watching. Go in peace.